Put that in the description?
Boom, boom.
No.
Yeah, I did. Oh, no, your links.
Yeah.
Your links are in the description. We are live.
And we are live! And welcome aboard.
We're live. We're going to try to talk about some stuff today.
Yes, we're going to talk, we're going to focus, and we're going to keep it under an hour. Is that,
yeah,
are those true statements?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have 3 p.m. on the dot.
Yeah, so the description is JimBob So Dumb that when Dumb went looking for JimBob, Dumb had to dig a hole, and it's still digging, looking for JimBob. So Dumb had to go lower than Dumb to find JimBob. That's why, Scott, you give me shit in the back room because I named my title, my video title so negatively. I don't know what you mean. What do you mean?
I just mean that if we're going to be doing multiple presentations like this in response to JimBob's obtuseness, we need to, make it like classic, like say, JimBob is so wrong. The next time, how wrong can JimBob be? JimBob keeps on being wrong. Is JimBob wrong?
I already used that title about 90 times. So JimBob So Wrong. I already used that one like 90 times. So I think it's something else. But I think I used JimBob So Dumb too 90 times.
Now, another important thing is we've had a suggestion to use the sturtlefish as a channel mascot, and my response is, I don't know, Benghazi. Let me look that up.
I think I should look that up too. What is a sturtlefish?
I don't know.
We need a sturtlefish. Let's see. Okay, let me do this.
Okay, it's like a snub-nosed gar or swordfish or something. It's just
Hey.
I'm looking at that's a sturtlefish hybrid. I don't know what's I need an actual purebred sturtlefish if such a thing is possible.
I never heard of a sturtlefish.
Yeah, when I first started to read it, I thought it was going to say sturgeon, but
yeah. So, okay. The reason I'm doing this is that in that debate that JimBob did on Modern Day Debate, and in that we, kind of touched on the other day with the stream, but the stream kind of got away on me. And in his response, Evolution Cultist Panel Up, where he digs even deeper and deeper. He's having a trouble with words like random, species, clade, how it all works, language. He doesn't seem to understand how language works. And I thought, part of this is that they freak the fuck out when we use the word design or purpose or something evolved to, or something was naturally selected to do something, right? So, I mean, that kind of ordinary talk is not part of evolution. It's part of how hi, Trusty Paco and Benghazi and Trusty Paco are here, and Certainty Exists was here, and Robin's here. Hello, Robin. Anyway, I'm thinking we need to stop using normal words to describe evolution because, apparently it's confusing a lot of creationists when we use normal words. Like JimBob's biggest problem is that we say humans evolved. How could we evolve if there were no humans back in the past, right? How could humans evolve? He actually has a problem with that. And no matter how many, now he'll say, oh, you're strawmanning me. No, I'm not. You keep saying it over and over again. And we can find instances here where he said it. But anyway, I do want to share, besides my 3 things to discuss, random species, clades, and how it all works. Maybe, let's see, maybe we should go talk about random first.
Well, that's the first one on the list.
Yeah. So let's see. What does random mean in evolutionary biology? I think, is this JimBob's? No, this isn't JimBob's. This is mine. Or no, yeah, this is JimBob's. So JimBob pulled it up. He called ChatGPT up in here somewhere. And he said, in evolutionary biology, random most commonly refers to the nature of genetic mutations, the changes in DNA that provide the raw material for variation. The key meaning that you got to think about is mutations are random with respect to fitness. So they don't happen because they're useful for the organism, right? So it's random. We call it random. And they get hung up on that because how can random create something with purpose is what they'll say over and over again. And so Robin had a conversation. Let's see, what was it? Oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna put it back on, Scott. You just relax.
Put what back on?
Combo about the word. Oh no, maybe I took it out. My cursor is real slow, so I'm gonna screw up. Somebody couldn't understand why we push back on the word purpose. Yeah, well. We use the word, we use purpose, we use designed, we use evolved to,
intention.
We use all kind intention, yeah. Or what the hell's the other one that Austin used? I can't remember exactly, but anyway, so these are problematic words. But a mutation occurs without any foresight or direction. Okay, and that's what we mean by random. So we don't have to use the fucking word random. We can just talk about mutations in a population. And then I also had independently, before JimBob did, called up the same thing. And I think it, where did it put it? And I mentioned it the other day. It means random, okay, same thing. Mutations don't occur because they would be beneficial or harmful. They just occur. So we have this variation in a population, and that's where it all starts. And that seems to be a real problem for these guys. So anyway, his exact position, he says, and these are his words, is that random means it is random that it is useful. It is not purposely useful. Correct. So the mutation itself is not purposely useful. I don't understand what's the problem for you, JimBob. So, and then he says, when you guys say it's random mutation, I simply say, what does that mean and how would you know it? It's like, well, okay, here's how we know it, JimBob. We understand how DNA mutates when it copies. And like radiation, we understand how that causes a mutation. We understand how mutation works chemically. We can observe that today. So that's how we know it's random. We know that mutation happens randomly, right? So if there's any change in the organism, we know that it happens randomly. Well, he could say, well, how do you know God isn't doing it? Well, if God is doing it, I don't know why he's doing it because it's all over the place, right? You want to respond to that? Like, how do we know? How do we know it's random? How do we know God's not doing it? Like right now, God is not mutating my genome to cause cancer. How do we?
God
How do we
be
know?
doing it and making it look random because he's trying to mimic randomness?
Yeah. Okay, so we know it because we know how DNA replication works, JimBob. We've studied this like for the last 50, 60, 70 years.
Hey, real quick,
I think.
Mike, was that just a rhetorical question? I thought you were asking me.
What?
Was that a rhetorical question about how we know it's random and not God doing something?
No, I was wondering how you'd respond to that because that would be one of the complaints. How do we know it's random? It's like, well, because we're atheists and we can't think of any other way it could work, right? So,
and of course, there's this. Look on the screen.
God moves in mysterious ways, and then we have the next one. You put the next one up? I'll put the next one up. God's randomness. Wait a minute. Is God's mysterious ways? Yeah. Random is an issue with me since I am a determinist, right? And it's not really random. Everything is determined, but humans will use the word random on something to mean that we don't know all of the variables that are going into the deterministic choice. I am a determinist too. So we use random to just say, we don't, that stuff has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's an independent variable. So it's going to follow some probability distribution. So anyway. Okay. So then let's see. When you guys say it's random mutation, I simply say, what does that mean and how would you know it? Then he says, yeah, exactly. And then you're like, there's nothing to do with causation. Well, no, that's if random mutation has nothing to do with causation, has nothing to do with explaining causation, then you can't make the claim that random mutation causes. I don't know the vestibular system to arise out of an unguided process. So if we say that it's random mutation, he's claiming that then we can't say that this random mutation was the raw material that caused a new organ to develop or whatever. And no, JimBob, because the random mutation is the raw material. It's not the end of the story, okay? You have to wait until you hear the end of the story. And the end of the story is going to be natural selection in a population over time. Is that clear? I'm saying you guys hold that there is no purpose or intent, right? There's nobody pushing this along or designing it or whatever. There's no purpose or intent anywhere in biology. So, let's see. So you have to add natural selection to the random raw material. You have to do population thinking, and you have to think about the diversity in a population and very small changes. You have to understand that environments are also going to change while all this is going on. The environment isn't just sitting there being static. It's going to be changing all over the place, across geography and through time. It's going to change. And then, of course, we have natural selection, which is what Mr. Darwin came up with as a way of looking at all of this. Okay, so I guess we'll play a clip from JimBob and see if we can maybe finish that up. Does that make sense, guys? Do you understand his confusion? We're saying it's random mutation, and he says, oh, how could that cause something if there's no cause to the random? Well, if the random doesn't cause anything, it doesn't.
The mutation's real because when you compare they have that's different. That's changed. It's not like the ones that they've studied before. It suddenly appeared in the population, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. A mutation occurred. It could have been exposure to chemical. It could have been exposure to a radiation. It could have been any number of causes, and it's different now. That's the mutation. The nature of the mutation is that it's random. So to say random can't cause anything, I don't know. He's missing the point. He's obfuscating on purpose. I don't know, but he's just not getting it. The mutation's there, and it occurred randomly, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, the problem he's going to have is, well, then how can it? He's going to say, oh, you just say it just popped up, right? Popped up randomly, but that is not true. Like organs don't pop up randomly. The 1/8 of a penis didn't pop up randomly. The liver didn't pop up randomly. A mutation happened randomly. A mutation is a much smaller, finer grained level. A mutation didn't happen that created turned a fin into a limb. It wasn't just one mutation. It was millions probably, or hundreds of thousands of mutations that were happening to the population. And that's the part that he's stumbling over. So that's the part that his tiny little mind is not able to get around when we say it just popped up. We can't talk like that anymore. We're not allowed to talk that way. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know, KCA Randy, I'm not really that nice a guy. You got to hear me in the morning. Anyway, okay. So that's a problem saying that something just popped up, because that's not what happened. We're looking at form. Oh God, and I hate to say this word because he's going to have a fit over that. Form and function in an organism is not directly tied to a mutation, right? There were mutations, and they were in a population, and there were lots of them that created a diversity, and that diversity basically, the diversity is kind of like a lava lamp. Some of the stuff will just drift out accidentally. Some of it gets killed accidentally. Some of it sticks around for a long time. And all of that diversity eventually locks into something that creates something with a very small advantage. And that very small advantage in a large population can be selected for. And that happens over a great deal of time. So mutations is too fine a grain to say that something popped up. So yeah, I'm going to give him a zinc finger up his butt. Oh, Robin's actually had 1/8 of a penis. Yeah, I've heard that being a problem. Fortunately, my spouse has never had that problem. Anyway, let's play a clip. Okay, let's see if we can figure this out. You see what I mean by, we got to be careful what words we use, Scott?
StreamYard doesn't have a dark mode for people that don't like it. If you're a feature that everyone should have.
Mutations do not arise because the organism needs them to survive, right? That's what we call random. So when you say something is random, what you're doing is you're talking about statistics and modeling and how you would model it, basically, because you're going to ignore all the causation behind how the mutation happens. And you're going to disconnect that from natural selection. So that's...
Yeah, exactly my point, old balls. Is when you guys say it's random mutation, I simply say, what does that mean and how would you know it? And then you're like, it has nothing to do with causation. Well, no, that's if random mutation has nothing to do with explaining causation, then you can't make the claim that random mutation causes, I don't know, the vestibular system to arise out of an unguided process.
That's why we call it random. So it's a useful word. Okay. So there it is. That's where he stated the problem. So no, JimBob, we're not saying that the random mutation caused a liver. We're saying that the random mutation provided the raw material from which a very, very complicated process, which you are not willing to listen to, ended up over thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of generations, creating a liver. Okay, that would be millions of generations. But if you want to listen to the rest of the story, you have to not go, lose your goddamn shit when somebody says random mutations are the raw material. So now you need to change your understanding to random mutations are the raw material, period, full stop. Okay, the raw material. We've got the rest of the story to tell you about before you're going to get to something happening. Okay, does that make sense, Scott? Are you not listening to me, Scott?
Yes, it makes sense. I'm listening. I'm just got you muted so you don't hear me type.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anyway, that thing you always complain about?
I need you because I need to know if I'm getting my point across really well, because it's really important. So, what do we got here? Yeah, okay. I got, let's see here. How does this work? Okay, remove. Okay, we can add it to the stage. Okay. So this slide here, let's see. If claims cannot be separated from a person's worldview. Okay, I don't know why I put that there. So let's see. He has, let me see, where does he say this exactly? There's nothing to do with causation. Yeah, okay. Well, no, that's if random mutation has nothing to do with explaining causation, then you can't make the claim that random mutation causes. Okay, we just went over that. So it's, yeah, and the other word is stochastic. Stochastic is random mutation on a probability distribution. So stochastic is more about probability, but anyway, we could talk about liver evolution, but we're not going to do that yet. But we kind of have to talk about how that happened. So the upshot, they're doing the classic bait and switch with random. In evolutionary biology, random doesn't mean anything can happen or no causes. It means mutations don't arise because the organism needs them. Mutations are random with respect to what would be useful. Evolution is not random because selection is a non-random filter. What random mutation actually means, the precise sentence, in biology, random mutation means mutations are not produced because they're beneficial. Selection sorts them afterwards. That's the rest of the story that you're not listening to because you're shooting your mouth off before the sentence goes on. The straw man in one sentence, they talk as if evolution is pure chance building a heart, but the theory is chance variation plus consistent filtering and population level accumulation over time. Calling evolution entirely random is like calling writing a novel entirely random because you can hit keys at random, ignoring that you will constantly delete nonsense and keep what makes sense. Selection is the delete key. So now I really hope JimBob understands that part of it, that it's raw material and then the rest of the story that we have to get to. Okay.
But selection is
and the rest of the
selection is the delete key, deleting members of a population that can't hack it or can't get chosen by a mate or something like that. It's not some force, some being up there knocking out members of a population intentionally to get rid of them.
Right. Okay, let's see if I can pop this up. Random mutations, when young guys say it's random, how it works. Let's see. Okay, you looked up random. Okay. Now we're moving on. Let's see. He's asking, did language evolve? Okay, so we're going to species. I'm not sure if this is where I wanted to go or not. Oh, okay, let's look up random. Okay, this is species. Okay, I gotta share the screen again. Okay. And then the other problem he had is with species because, we can't, he seems to think that we.
Yeah, I agree with this, Ito, that even in internal critique, there's no neutral ground for any of it. Epistemology, metaphysics, and the rest. There's no neutral position. Everything's theory laden. Yep.
Have to say something about humans evolved. And then if we go back to where we're not really sure if we could call them humans, then he has a problem with saying, well, how could they evolve if they didn't exist? And it's like,
yeah, that's a good question, actually. You just understanding that question and failing to acknowledge the problem of that identity problem. When you say humans evolved from this other thing, and you go, was the other thing human? And they go, no. And then you go, humans evolved. Okay. If you say humans, current, present tense, evolved, changed from not human, then you have a problem of identity, right? You have a big problem of identity. And watch how they.
No, there's no problem whatsoever.
I know.
I can't believe. I don't understand where he's not getting. The law of monophyly says we have evolved as what primates as apes, as genus
Fish?
Homo, as a hominid, whatever. I don't know all the right words, but
It goes all the way back. Yeah.
And what evolves from us will also be human, but there was a time where there was not a human. And remember, we are the ones who determine, the scientific community are the ones that determine the species, what category they belong to. And they just, they take certain properties, certain characteristics, and say, hey, these seem to define this particular species or this particular family or order. But they, while it can have its problems, they're very systematic and very collaborative, and they review each other's works and they criticize each other until you have a more or less coherent approach to classifying creatures. And so things that were not human can evolve. Their offspring can develop characters, or did develop characteristics that we now consider human because we're a separate thing. So I don't.
Yeah, that's where
it's hard to not see his misunderstanding after all this time as not being intentional, because he has an audience to appeal to.
I know, it just doesn't make any goddamn sense what he's saying. It's like, it's a way of talking that humans evolved, and he's saying, oh, if they weren't humans before, how could they evolve? That is just, that's even like lower than second grade understanding of how people talk about things. And it's like, I'm trying to think of an example. I cooked dinner. Well, how could you cook dinner? It wasn't dinner until you cut it up and it was done cooking. It's like, or I'm making dinner. How can you be making dinner? I'm watching you cut up carrots. That's not dinner. The carrots aren't dinner, right? The potatoes aren't dinner. Dinner's like all that stuff cooked in together and laid into plates on a table. That's dinner, right? So is that what he's doing? Can you understand why he would do that?
I think if I tried to understand what he did, I might have to have years and years of therapy after that. I don't know.
Yeah, but he talks like, I think about 50% of this video is him talking about this identity problem. And it's just nuts. But what I wanted to point out here is that, okay, species, when we talk about a species, so if I get my notebook, I'm a naturalist, and I go out in the backwoods here, and I'll find a whole bunch of trees that look the same. And I look at them and I look at their leaf structure, and they're the same, and they have the same acorns and whatever. And I'll say, oh, that's a species. I'm gonna write a memo and call it an oak. So that's my name for the oak tree. But now if I go a little further into the forest and go down into the lowlands, and the oak trees are not as tall, the leaves are slightly different, and it's like, hey, what's up here? Maybe I have another species of an oak. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Maybe it's just, developmental. I don't know. So I could write down two species. I could call it red oak, call the other one white oak, right? So I got two different oak trees, and we'll call it a species. My point is, saying that something is a species is just a memo about something that we observe in the world today. So that's a memo, right? Now, the other word is clade, and that is not a memo about a species. A clade is a hypothesis, and we'll get a little bit further into that. But where do I have the scientific method here? Let me see. I wonder if that's the next slide. I was going to go down to the scientific method. Oh no. Well, let me try to find that. Why did I lose the scientific method? I'll be damned. Let's see. Not a continuum fallacy. Humans or apes. Biological categories. I can't find it. Oh, no, it's way up here. Way the hell up here. Okay. So here's the scientific method, okay? We're obviously in the present. we're always in the present, right? So we're observing what is around us in the present. So the very first thing we do when we're studying life in general, we're starting at the top. We're going to study life. We make an observation. Our observation is that there's all these things, and they kind of look alike. And we've made a memo that they're oak trees. They're red oaks, okay? And then we go a little bit further and we find all these things that, are low and on the ground. They have flowers. We call them daisies. So now we got another thing, daisies. And we notice that not all the daisies look exactly alike. That some of the daisies are just a little bit different than the other ones, but overall, we're just going to call them daisies. We're going to write that memo down. It's a daisy. So we've looked at all of this diversity of life, and what we see is that we can use this word species to describe a group within this massive collection of diverse life all over the planet. Okay, and our question is, how did that diverse? So the question becomes, and that's the next part of the scientific method, that's right there, question. Okay, the question is, how did all this diversity arise? Okay, so then we start looking at this diversity, and we see that the red oak and the white oak, even though they seem to be different species, and they don't seem to crossbreed, though I don't think they do. I don't think they can crossbreed. We can say that, God, they're really similar. They don't look like a daisy. They're something else. So we're going to say that, okay, these two oaks, we're going to put them in a clade. We're going to go look at all of the primates, and we're going to say, oh, they all have 5 fingers and dexterity, and they all have these similar characteristics, and we're going to put it in a clade called primates. And now we're going to come up with a hypothesis that all of those primates are closely related, that they came from a common ancestor, that somewhere way back, 40 million years ago or more, I think it's like 35, 40 million years ago, that there was maybe perhaps one species that gave rise to this diverse population. How did they do that? There was random mutation and natural selection over 35 million years. So 35 million years times 5, that's 100 and what is that, 175? I don't know. Hang on a second here. Okay, I'll do the calculation, though I can't do calculations while I'm talking in a social manner. I don't know why that is. Okay, divided by 20. That's 1.7 million generations, basically, that we're saying. So that's our hypothesis, and that's what evolution is about. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do 1 million experiments, okay? We're going to look at the, we're going to dissect these things. We're going to look at their morphology. We're going to look at, we're going to look at the embryos, how they develop. We have 1 million papers on the similarities among primates, all the primates that we find. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to find out, are they really related? Do they develop from the zygote in the same way? Do they have the same structure internally? Do their livers look the same? And then further, like in the last 20 years, 26 years, maybe 30 or 40, we can go further and we can look at the DNA. And that gives us a whole lot more information for a couple of reasons that I'm not going to talk about right now. But there's much more to that story about how DNA will tell you that things are related. And what'll happen is when you look at the DNA, you find out, okay, this one thing here, even though it looks the same, has 5 fingers and acts the same, it doesn't belong, because the DNA shows you that it's in an out group, that it's not in that group that we're hypothesizing about. And then you'll have a big fight with other, with other anatomists and embryologists and other biologists about where does this thing belong. And eventually there'll be a consensus, and we'll sort of, take these outliers and modify our hypothesis, because our experiments told us, well, this one thing doesn't quite fit, but these other things still fit. So we haven't falsified our hypothesis. We've just refined our hypothesis. Okay. And that's what we're doing all the time with genetics. So, and then, well, experiment and analysis, you come up with a conclusion, and then you make sure that you can replicate the experiment over and over again, that it wasn't just a one-off thing. If you get some DNA and the DNA says, oh, this is just not part of that group, you have to look at another sample of DNA, some other researcher somewhere else, and confirm that. So you have to confirm at every point. So that's kind of how that works. How we doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and you're doing a good job too.
Oh, good.
We are still under an hour, which is great.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're at 29:48 on the, well, let's see if JimBob's done. What happened? Oh, I got to put it back on the screen. Oh, here we go.
Analogy.
Like, that's what he was saying on language. Fuck.
Yeah, it's just a continuum fallacy.
It's not. It's actually not a continuum fallacy.
Yeah,
we'll
it
look at
is.
that in a second too.
As far as I'm concerned.
Well,
it's like
he
saying
says,
if you can't point to the exact first person who was a Spanish speaker, then obviously Spanish didn't evolve from Latin.
No, because language, even if you said the words that referent, even if you said those sounds changed, language as an identity, as a universal, didn't change. Language is language. There's no point in time where language evolved to not be language. Language is.
there we go. So he seems to think that humans are like the category language in general, right? When what we're talking about is specific languages like Spanish, the Romance languages, and
There are
so we're
a
talking about
subcategory of the languages
the languages,
itself.
right? Okay, but he seems to think that's calling something a human means it's in this big category that's like saying language or no language, not language.
Well, that's a
human or not human.
That's a cognitive
Religious.
bias, at least.
That's religious, right?
Yeah, it's a religiously imported idea that does not belong and cannot be proven
Right.
out, because what he seems to be implying as well is that once you evolve, you're no longer human or something like that. And no, anything that evolves from us will be forever related to humanity, will be human. And if they evolve into their own separate species, well, they're humans that became their own either subspecies or species. Do they cease to become human? In some ways, maybe, but only because it becomes too laborious to keep extolling their human aspects, because they're their own separate species, and we have to extol those aspects that make them that species.
So what's going on here, I think, is, and this is another major conflation in their thinking and in their argumentation style, is that when you're talking about the human animal, they're dealing with exceptionalism. They think the humans are so exceptional. And as proof of that, I have a chat with a guy, and he started we were talking about, I mentioned the identity problem, and he right away went to pre-supping me on how did rationality develop? How did humans become logical and rational? So they're talking about human exceptionalism. So what this tells us is that if you're going to talk to them about evolution, you can never talk about human evolution. You have to talk about the evolution of, say, mammals or beetles or, oak trees. If you talk to them about humans, they're going to muddy the water with this by bringing in all this bullshit about,
well, they're just going to change the subject. Human. That's what they're doing. When they start doing that, when they start talking like that, how do you justify rationality? Blah, blah, blah. They're just admitting, okay, I can't win this argument. Let's start another argument.
Yeah. Yep. So with human, they immediately go to this exceptionalism where they can't imagine a half human. So that's part of the problem in JimBob's thinking, is that he can't imagine what a half human is. With something that isn't quite human. He can't imagine that for some reason, because he thinks that humans have this God-granted mind spirit thing, and he's not going to talk about that. So if you want to talk to him about evolution, you have to avoid talking about humans. And I think that's the case with all creationists. Okay. You have to talk to them about other animals, and they never want to do that. They always want to run. They always want to run their mouth off about humans. So that's a really important point, that we have to keep them away from that exceptionalism with humans. They don't understand what humans are. So how in the fuck can you explain to them how humans evolved? They do understand what frogs are, and we have a better luck trying to explain to them how frogs evolved. That is my point. So, ixnay on the humans, want to talk about frogs or reptiles or some fucking thing. Anything but humans.
Or bananas giving birth to pine trees or something.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that. Okay. Somewhere I have a cursor on my fucking vast acreage of monitor. It's hard to find my cursor. Oh, come on. Give me that. Give me that. Give me that. Oh, it doesn't change the apple. So, yeah, okay. So he says, yeah, the identity question is a good question. No, it ain't, JimBob. It's not a good question, because I told you, when we talk about a species, what an apple is or what an oak tree is, we're writing a memo. And it's a lot more complicated than that. Within that species, there's all kinds of variation. There's all kinds of gray area. We might even have like hybrids, that sort of thing. Okay. So, yeah, I think this is kind of the same talk.
Furthermore, the things you're referring to in language don't evolve. So you can have the sounds of the words you're saying to refer to an apple change. You could have it. You could make it so when you say kangaroo, you mean apple. It doesn't change the apple. Doesn't change the apple.
Which obviously.
But if you call something a field, and then the farmer goes out and plows the field, can you still call it a field? Because it's changed. The thing you're referring to has changed. Why does he have a problem with fucking how language works? He thinks he's got this referent thing down because he'll use that word over and over again, but he doesn't understand quite at all about the thing you're referring to, and he doesn't understand how you could call a field before it's plowed. It's like, I don't know. It's mind-numbing what he will use as an argument against evolution, and think that he's got some big gotcha that nobody's ever thought of before. It's just mind-boggling. I don't get it.
Obviously, that's not how it happened. It evolved.
And did Spanish evolve from Latin anyway?
Gradually from Latin. There would have been people speaking a combination of Latin and Spanish, a very Spanish-like Latin or a very Latin-like Spanish, and over time, mores changed common use.
Yeah, tell me where, Austin, in that change did the thing universally called a language change into not a language? It's still a language.
Here he goes again. So we can, okay, so we beat that one to death. Not a language. It's just, he's making a huge category error, basically, and he will say that we are, but he is obviously jumping into the category of, like, what would be in the category with language? Other human behaviors or other behaviors? I don't know. So anyway, he doesn't think that the evolution of languages is a good way to expect. Yeah, okay. What am I not getting? Certainty exists. Tell me in words what I'm not getting about this. Okay, why is he talking about language and not language when Austin is talking about one language gradually modifying and changing into another language? You guys fucking believe that. you believe there were like, I don't know, 50 languages in Tower of Babel, and then it broke up, and then these languages broke into dialects and broke into sub-languages. I mean, do you think every single extant language was there at the Tower of Babel, or Babel, or Bibble, or whatever the fuck it is? Babel Bibble? Is it Babel? Anyway, so yeah, we could map the evolution of language, and we understand how things evolve slowly over time, how they make one change. Now, we can get to a little bit of that. How are we doing for time? We got 15 minutes left?
Yeah, you got 15 minutes. It's a practically an eternity.
Yeah. So what have we talked about? Have we talked about the things we want to talk about? Let me see here. Let me check.
We had kind of an outline on one of your slides.
Huh?
You had sort of an
Three
outline.
things to discuss: random, species, and clades. Okay, I talked about species.
Notice
Species is a
JG's
memo.
not explaining himself. Notice he's not saying anything about what he said. You don't get. He's just not responding. That's pretty
He's
typical.
not responding.
He's trying to do that, trickster language bullshit with Robin now.
Oh, is he? So
Yeah.
why don't you put your fucking mouth where your ass is? I don't know what I want to say. Okay, I don't get it. What don't I
You've
get?
asked him you've asked him a question. He's not bothered to respond. There's no need to
He's not bothered to respond.
acknowledge him any further.
Okay, we'll just give up on him. Whatever. Okay, so but here's the thing. So we got a job. We're kind of a big job. We have to explain a whole lot of shit. It's really, where the hell could I start with this? I don't even know where to start. Okay, so we have populations, right? So, I got to take that shit off the screen. Where's that? Come on, mousey. Where'd my mousey go? Oh shit. Maybe I should get rid of a few monitors. What do you think? Hey, find my mouse faster. Brr. Okay, so like a population of animals, is basically this big glob of things, right? And in that population, we have all of these individuals, and we can look at humans, and we know that, you look different than me, I look different than, the next person. So there's a lot of differences. Some of us are taller, some of us are, thinner, stronger, whatever. And there's this huge population of, with diversity between these things. They're not all identical. And this population is going to basically pass into another population at another moment in time, okay, where there's going to be even more diversity, except some of these guys from this population aren't going to make it. They aren't going to reproduce at all. So their mutations are not going to end up over here. And so the mutations that end up over here are going to be fit. They're going to be lucky in that they're going to survive and find a mate and reproduce. And so we have a new population. But the thing is that is not a true diagram, okay? The true diagram is like this, because populations just suddenly don't magically change into another population. There's this gradual thing. And when you look at it, what you're looking at here is you've got a male, which is green right here. Let me see if I can go over to that. Okay, there's a male right there, and there's a female, and at some point they reproduce and they have a child. Okay, and that one goes over here and becomes this green child. Okay, so that's a male, and this one goes over here, and then they have a boy and they have a girl, and now that girl gets together with another male from a different part of the population. And then on and on and on. And the population is gradually going to change over time. And the the alleles in the population are going to gradually change over time, and are going to do that because of this little bit here about luck. You know, some things die tragically before they get a chance to reproduce. Other things are incapable of reproducing because they have a bad mutation that doesn't make it. Other things do a really good job of reproducing, and like this one right here might turn into basically 3 different, has 3 children, right? And these other ones only have 1 children. Well, the one that has 3 children, it's going to be very likely that eventually this sucker is going to spread more in the population than anything else. And this happens over a vast amount of time. So what we need to explain to them, the next piece that needs to be explained is, let me get rid of this shit. I probably shouldn't have got rid of that because that's really important not to talk about humans, right? The next thing that needs to be explained is how these random mutations, which are the raw material, this big bag, it's like a big bag of millions of random mutations, right? So how does that actually produce a liver? Now, JimBob legitimately asked that question, and creationists will legitimately ask that question, but they have to sit around long enough to hear the fucking answer, because the answer is not going to be easy. This is why we spend years and years and years studying molecular biology, embryology, genetics, evolution, population dynamics, all of that stuff. They've got to be really patient if they want to know how a liver developed. So that's kind of our next challenges. They ask a legitimate question when they ask, how did an organ come from not an organ? Well, JimBob is such a fool. He'll say, well, how could the liver evolve if there was no liver to begin with? And it's like, no, JimBob, you wouldn't have called it a liver. Like, there are animals today that have a collection of cells that do some of the functions that our liver does, but that would not call that thing a liver in like an insect. They have a different system. They call it something else. It's just that these things started out in some manner, some morphology, some very small thing, and over time they mutated to the point where the things started to coalesce. The cells got more and more complicated. They got more diverse. They added functions. Our livers have 500 different things that they do, 500 functions. Okay. Obviously, those 500 functions did not develop all at once. But the first function is what we got to look at, that very first thing. But it did not exist inside of an extant liver. There wasn't a liver like ours with one function. You have to listen to the whole story, right? And say, oh, it's just a story. Well, a hypothesis is a story, right? And we have a story about how livers evolved. And that would be a challenge that I'm willing to accept, to just drill into how did livers start. And fortunately, we have extant species that have proto-livers, like really rudimentary collections of areas with a lot of with a lot of what do they call it? Not veins, not arteries, blood vessels. A lot of blood vessels coalesced around the digestive system, and they have some function to get rid of toxins, and that's kind of the proto-liver. You go from that, and you spend a lot of time developing into a liver with 500 fucking functions. Now, and the other thing, Scott, did you know, Scott, your liver might only have 499 functions, and mine has 502. So my liver might do 502. Yeah, I did. I planned that. So if my liver has 502 functions, and we both live around a Texas oil mill or oil, whatever the refinery, you might die and I won't. But we both have kids, so it doesn't matter.
You did a lot of drinking in your day. You just may not have much liver functions left either.
Well, or my other 2 functions actually handled that alcohol and didn't kill me as fast as your habit of your habit of eating munchies is going to kill you. So
in a few generations, we'll have more competent alcoholics, I guess, out there.
In the words of the great Hannibal Lecter, Hannibal Lecter was, a very interesting person, and we love
gross. Nerdy ate fava beans.
Yeah, heck. Yeah. Anyway, so I think we beat species, random, and clade to death. Very important to think about clade.
Did you differentiate clade and species?
I said that species is a memo that we write.
Okay.
But when we talk about a clade, we're going further. We're making a hypothesis. Okay. So we ask the question: how did all these animals develop? And then our hypothesis is that these things are all related. They came from a common ancestor.
You're asserting relatedness.
Right. But the important thing about that is we're going back to this common ancestor, and then we got the branch, our extant species, and then from that branch we could find some fossils and find some like humans, right? These are the extant species today. This is our observation using the scientific method, and we ask the question: how did these things develop? And we say, and our hypothesis is that they came from this common ancestor. And then we find a fossil here and a fossil there, and that becomes part of our hypothesis. We're also saying that came from a common ancestor. And then we have the rabbit. We're actually closely related to rabbits, I think. More closely related to rabbits than dogs. We have the rabbit, which is an outgroup. Okay, so that's not in our clade. This is our clade right here. So that's our clade. Or actually, this whole thing is our clade. Okay, the rabbit not in there. He came from somewhere before. So now if we want to include the rabbit, my diagram just got really messy, didn't it? If we want to include the rabbit now, we have to expand our hypothesis to go back and find the common ancestor for the rabbit and the primates or whatever. So that's a challenge. That is the challenge of evolution. There's nothing in there about fucking identities or having problems with saying a rabbit evolved or there's a common ancestor. The common ancestor of all primates, this guy right here, we are going to hypothesize about what that was and what it looked like. And if we find a fossil, we might actually give it a name. We'll write that memo down and give it a name for the species, right? And I don't think we've done that yet. So I don't think we found a sure, we found things in the lineage that we can fight about. But so we're working this stuff out. And that's what evolution is working out this problem. So he asks really stupid questions about identity and makes stupid analogies about language. And he's really dumb and he doesn't understand why he's wrong. And I can't fucking help him any more than what I've done. I mean, can we help him any more? Is there any way?
Well, once again, I said my attitude is don't focus on any individual. Use this as a jumping point for spreading knowledge or information rather than misinformation. But there's other people out there who watch JimBob, and maybe some of them will begin to see that JimBob just doesn't have things lined up properly, I think, about evolution, and he really needs to learn some stuff, some background knowledge. He needs to learn what he doesn't know, as well as what he thinks he knows.
So in chat, I asked, why is your identity problem a problem for evolution? Why do you think your identity problem has teeth? I know your tiny mind has some issue with saying humans evolved from something else. Oh, I gotta go. Hang on a second. You talk for a minute.
Well, it's up to me to talk now. And I don't know that you want that. I don't think that's a good thing for the world, that I'm sitting here talking all by myself, seeing if people are going to respond. I don't know. But no, I just don't understand why people think JimBob is right about this, because he gets things so wrong so much. And there are plenty of great people. Let me share. In the description, you will see a duplicate entry for John Perry's Stated Clearly channel. He's doing what has so far turned out to be one of the best educational efforts I've seen out there concerning the evolution of the flagellum. He did an overview of it a couple of weeks ago. This week, he has done some background material on evolution, talking about things like optimization, recruitment, and other concepts. So go out to John Perry's Stated Clearly channel and look at the most recent videos he has done on the evolution of the flagellum. It's got great video. It's got great teaching concepts, and I think everybody will get a lot out of it and have some more material to provide in their discussions. Well, this is me not feeling dead air very well. So how's everybody out there doing? Anybody here want to let us know anything new that they're sensing out in the sphere of influence we have involving atheism, science, skepticism, evolution? I sometimes get worried that we are going to get a little too siloed. Like there have been several really interesting new, I guess I'll call them debaters, but they basically do these call-in shows similar to The Line and similar to Atheist Experience, except it's usually people like Justin from Deconstruction Zone, or Dalton is a newer one, kind of a friend of Justin, and has branched off to do his own call-in channel. People like Dr. Blitz or allegedly Ian. But
yeah, there's
a British gentleman, his first name is John, Jon, but I can't remember his last name, although I'm subscribed to him. I fear what I kind of hear in between all of them is the arguments are getting to be a lot the same. A lot of the same scriptures are brought up. A lot of those kinds of arguments are being shared with one another. It makes me wonder, are we going to be losing any kind of innovation?
Yeah.
I'm kind of concerned about that. So has anybody heard any new arguments or approaches that maybe they're not original, but they haven't been used a lot lately?
So is evolution a religion? Oh boy, you're gonna have that debate, Robin.
Tell us more.
Good luck with that one. Where are you gonna have that debate at, Robin? Because we want to watch that one.
I definitely want to put that in my watch later.
Yeah. So my sister is being released from the hospital and into the care of my other sister and my niece. So we're hoping that she'll be okay. So anyway, what else? I think we're done. I think maybe. It's going to be interesting to see where JimBob goes with this. It's like he's going to double down on this identity bullshit. I did want to before we leave. So this guy, okay. So I said that. Why is it a problem? Why is this identity thing a problem? Because the identity of a species is just a memo. We just say it's a human, that's an oak tree, that's a daisy, whatever. Not a problem. And so this mafia test went on, and he did this whole fucking pre-sub bullshit. When I asked what the problem was for evolution, right? Instead of talking about evolution, at what exact point did a creature that was not rational suddenly become rational? So he went on with this, they do not evaluate logic, animals, chemical reactions do not evaluate logic. They went on and on and on, and it was just, and I basically told him to stick your precept up in your butt, put it in your butt and shut the fuck up and talk to me about evolution, because that's what it is. And I said, you change the subject from species identity to rationality. Why is it a problem to say humans evolved? That means that whatever you call a human today evolved from something. That's what we're saying. We're not saying that the thing was a human before it was a human. You fucking idiots. Stop it. It's not a problem for biology.
And here's the question. Why should... He's asking, if you scoot, I'll need you to scroll back down a little bit. He asked the question, why should blind
chemistry produce
survival-driven chemistry produce reliable truth, recognizing reasoning instead of merely survival useful behavior? Because it's useful to survival. I mean, we survive better because we can reason and logic and band together in larger than family groups. And that in and of itself is enough to make it. But why should it? There is no why should it. There is a how did it.
You see what that is, Scott? That's fucking bait. That's chum. They threw chum out of the back of the boat and you attacked it. And so I said, fuck that. I'm not attacking that. I'm not going to talk to you about rationality. Let's talk about livers. Let's talk about fingers. And it's like the problem is that the things that they throw out, are so important that we want to address them, and we take the bait every fucking time. Anyway, but yeah, that's what you said is good, but you took the bait. I didn't.
It's very true. Don't be forced into changing the topic. However, we're just riffing right now, so changing the topic is not really a bad deal.
Yep. So I told him, you change the subject from species identity to rationality. Why is it a problem to say humans evolved and not complete that sentence? Humans evolved from something else. That's what we should have said. Humans evolved from something that was not a human. Okay, why is this a problem for biology? And then he goes on and he tells me, oh, I didn't understand the question and all this bullshit. So you misunderstood the point completely. It's not about whether biological change happens. It's about identity. If humans evolved gradually from non-humans, then there must have been a generation where the parents were non-human, but the child was human. No. Continuum fallacy, dipshit. It's like there was never a point where something was not a human and then it suddenly became a human. You see what they're doing? I mean, it's just not. If you and JimBob talks about gradients, and he misses the point about gradients entirely. If you go from red to yellow, there's orange in the middle, basically. He'll say, but the red and the orange still exist. It's like, yeah, but it's a fucking gradient. We're trying to talk about a concept of a gradient. We're not trying to talk about whether red and yellow exist.
Besides the identity, the only identity there is life.
Yeah.
All the other stuff is us just trying to understand how all the changes made. It's still
we're going to categorize it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so he goes on and he's got a big blurb about what changed their not their shape, not their DNA percentage, identity itself. No. A non-human never just turned into a human in one generation. That is not how this shit works. So anyway, I told him he was sidestepping, and he goes on, and then JimBob gets into the picture, and it's just all bullshit. But I think we're done. We got enough for the moment. You think?
I think we have done our job as well as we could.
Yeah.
The time and circumstances that are available.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, onward. Where are you named?
Onward, non-Christian soldiers, going as to not war, with not the cross of Jesus going on before. I'm going to stop.
Very good. Very good sign out, Scott. Very good sign out. We're going to record that. We're going to play it every time we sign out. Okay. We're going to end, okay? Is that okay?
Let's go.
Goodbye, crew.
Everybody.
Goodbye, crew world.